became the first solid propellant strategic missile in the Air Force. The Air Force also gained expertise in missile launch techniques. Modern installation at Patrick Air Force Base on the Atlantic coast and Vandenberg Air Force Base on the Pacific coast are monuments to aerospace missile boost and launch technology. The land-based nuclear missile deterrent role was assigned to the Strategic Air Command as early as 1957. This capability, once fully developed and combined with the formidable B-52 intercontinental bombers, gave the Air Force the world's major nuclear deterrent force. It became a prime element in the Triad, a combined force composed of ICBM missiles, manned bombers, and the underwater sea-launched solid propellant Polaris and Poseidon missiles developed by the U.S. Navy. This missile and bomber retaliatory force will be maintained for the future with the addition of advanced missiles and supersonic bombers. International events proved the wisdom of a deterrent force concept during the Cuban crisis of 1962. On October 14, 1962, aerial reconnaissance photography revealed indisputable evidence that the Soviets, despite strong official denials, were providing the Cuban government with an offensive nuclear missile and aircraft force capable of striking every nation in the Western Hemisphere. On October 22nd, 8 days after the discovery, President John Kennedy drew the line with the Soviet government. He said, "Retaliatory response against the Soviet Union will immediately follow any attack against the Western Hemisphere." The Cuban situation reached crisis level. As the president spoke, U.S. forces throughout the free world rapidly moved to alert status. The strategic, air defense, and tactical air commands dispersed aircraft to assure survival and the ability to retaliate against nuclear attack. The Air Force Reserve, Air National Guard, and Military Air Transport Service quickly responded to provide support. It was the fastest mobilization ever imposed on U.S. military forces. Airborne radar maintained a constant vigil in sensitive areas. The Navy quarantined waters around Cuba. Army troops were quickly moved to Florida bases. The message to the Soviet Union was loud and clear. Either remove the missiles and bombers from Cuba, or the United States will take the steps necessary to remove them. On the 28th of October, following the presidential ultimatum, the Soviets accepted America's position, and the Cuban crisis began to subside. It lasted less than 1 month. When the tremendous potential of missile technology was recognized back in the late 1950s, the prospect of putting man in space became a realistic possibility. The Air Force made its vast experience in booster development and launch technology available to the newly formed National Aeronautics and Space Administration. The Air Force School of Aerospace Medicine at Brooks Air Force Base placed emphasis on investigations of the hostile environment of space and its effects on man. They started with the chimpanzee and the rhesus monkey, and progressed to advanced testing programs to provide man's ability to adjust to spatial requirements. High G loads, zero gravity, manual dexterity, eating and drinking, body stress, and on and on. Pilots of the X-15 rocket-propelled research aircraft were the first officially designated astronauts in the U.S. Air Force. Their astronaut wings were well-deserved, for they demonstrated the concept that manned, controlled flight into space with re-entry into the atmosphere to land like a conventional airplane was feasible for future aerospace flight. The X-15 pilots, both Air Force and NASA, flew 199 extremely high-altitude missions to gather aerodynamic, airframe structure, and flight control data, as well as to study the physiological aspects of high speed and high altitude flight.